Sorry for the cliffhanger, let's continue. Ganondorf finally appeared in a canon game for the first time since Twilight Princess in 2006. This of course had people excited, but there was one idea that spread across many places and became fairly popular. The idea that Ganondorf, the king of evil, not only wouldn't be the main villain but would be an ally. This idea has its birth from two things. One, Ganondorf is hot and some people want to make ships without feeling bad. Two, and most importantly, Wind Waker Ganondorf showed that he wasn't actually so bad and could be redeemed. Or at least that's what everybody seems to believe. Wind Waker Ganondorf is one of the most misunderstood characters I've seen in my life. Never have I seen a character to be so constantly misunderstood. Let me explain what I mean by this. In this game, Ganondorf is the exact same person as in Ocarina. After finally breaking the seal the sages had placed on him, he started an attack that seems to be similar to the one he executed in Tears of the Kingdom. He also specifically killed the sages that kept the Master Sword powerful so no one would face him. He made Hyrule a hell again. It is not known if there was no hero to face him or if Ganondorf killed the hero and was forgotten, but regardless, as his victory was inevitable, the goddesses felt sorry for the people of Hyrule, so they commanded them to go to the mountains and flooded Hyrule while also sealing Ganondorf and his army. For now we can agree that Ganondorf is evil, right? He attempted genocide for a thing that these people aren't even responsible for, and even the gods deem this as too much. Then we get to Wind Waker, where after pondering, Ganondorf calmed down a bit. The game begins with one of Ganondorf's servants kidnapping Link's sister because he wanted to find the Drivers of Wisdom within Princess Zelda's descendant. At least, the girls are alive and well fed instead of dead, which is the nicest thing he does in this story, but after this he literally sends Link to die on the ocean. Then he starts sending his smaller army of monsters through the ocean, attacking Baloo, destroying Jabun's island, and spawning monsters in little islands. Whoa, such a nice man! He is purposefully ruining everything everywhere, but he let 3 girls he kidnapped live. After Link obtains the Master Sword and accidentally frees Ganon's army, he humiliates Link and decides to kill him. Yeah, a lot of mercy there. Then he starts searching for Tetra and disappears for a while. In the finale, he kidnaps Tetra and orders to kill Link. All of this while having his usual funny demeanor and laughing. Then the parts that make people misunderstand his character begin. Here he talks about how deadly and hollow the sea is, and claims the gods destroy their people. This is so hypocritical it hurts. The gods flooded Hyrule to save their people from Ganondorf's rage. The only one to blame for this is Ganondorf himself. And the worst part? Throughout the game we interact with people, and does it seem like their life are impossible? Because it seems they maintain their usual behavior. Ganondorf is completely wrong in everything here, and that's a good thing. He is the villain. He is the character the viewer is supposed to disagree with. After defeating Puppet Ganon, we hear what Ganondorf has to say about his past. This is the most misunderstood part about him. Tell me, where do you see him mentioning the Gerudo? Because I always hear everyone talking about how this scene shows how he cared about his people and he only wanted a better life for them. Excuse me, but I don't see it. He is only talking about what he talked of the desert. This is consistent. In Ocarina of Time he came to live in Hyrule and left the Gerudo in the desert. And in every game the Gerudo live in the desert because they want to. So all I can see from this is that Ganondorf very probably despised the Gerudo because they made him the king of the desert. This scene doesn't show how Ganondorf secretly had good motives. It shows the origin of his envy and hatred. The reason he made the lives of the Hylian hell was because he envied where they lived. Finally, he beats Link but doesn't kill him. Only because he is in a good mood, because before he wasn't so merciful. And what does he say when he makes his wish? He doesn't say, give Hyrule back to its people, or give Hyrule back to the world. He says, give Hyrule to me. When his plans are completely ruined, what do you think he does? Does he try something new? A change? No, he immediately tries to ruin his wish as revenge, even if it won't give him anything. Then he dies and finally accepts death, as he says that the wind is blowing, and he previously described the wind he knew as a bringer of death. This is Wind Waker Ganondorf, a completely irredeemable monster who deserves no sympathy whatsoever. I want to clarify that I wasn't criticizing him as a character. He is fantastic, an absolutely memorable villain, and strongly improves the story of Wind Waker. But I'm seriously tired of people treating him like a misunderstood person with a chance of redemption. Every chance he has of redemption is tossed away because he's pure evil. He's a representation of everything that is wrong with a person. However, there is another reason that people think that Ganondorf deserves redemption, and it is also based on a misunderstanding, and that is the Curse of Demise. First though, we have to understand what the curse is, because the English translation had a few inaccuracies, so let's use this retranslation of the Japanese text. Human, having been able to overcome me. You are such a strong human. Splendid, but remember, this is not over. My hatred, the curse of the demon tribe, they shall continuously go on reincarnating until the end of times. Do not forget it, I shall repeat it. You people who possess the blood of the goddess and the soul of the hero shall, forever, be unable to escape from this curse. This hatred and grudge, its evolution shall forever painfully wander across this blood-stained dark sea, along with your low lives forever. So, an incarnation of his hatred is not really accurate. His hatred is the demon tribe, and its evolution is what will haunt them. In fact, Demise isn't even casting any curse, he is just stating facts that became true when he and the demon tribe were born. Ganondorf and all of the other Zelda villains are a part of this curse, not because they are related to Demise, but because they all use demonic power and the demon tribe to bring the same chaos Demise desired. We can know that Ganondorf isn't a literal reincarnation of Demise thanks to Spirit Tracks. In that game, there is a Demon King, like Demise and Ganondorf, who was sealed, like Demise and Ganondorf. However, Maladus existed long before Ganondorf faced his death. So, Demise's curse was affecting two people at the same time? No, it's because Maladus and Ganon are two different beings who continue Demise's legacy. It just happens that one is significantly more important and powerful than the other. It is very likely that the Demon Tribe simply placed their power with Ganondorf, and he looks like Demise in Tears of the Kingdom because the previous Demon King looked like that. For example, when Tetra is given the Triforce of Wisdom, she looks like the last princess of Hyrule who had the Triforce of Wisdom. Also, Ganondorf has some bad qualities that Demise didn't have. For example, Demise never lies. He is a very direct guy who just tries to use his strength to win. Meanwhile, Ganondorf is a huge manipulator. Demise showed respect for his enemies, such as saying that Hylia was magnificent or congratulating Link for being so brave. But Ganondorf tends to be less respectful, destroying the statue of the Hero of Time, or in Tears of the Kingdom calling Rauru's arm pathetic. And when Demise is defeated, he accepts defeat and congratulates his enemy. Meanwhile, when Ganondorf is defeated, he cries out like a little baby. What I'm trying to say here is that Ganondorf isn't evil because some curse is forcing him. He is part of the curse because he is evil and powerful. With all of this, I think you should understand why wanting a redemption for Ganondorf is like wanting a redemption for Frieza or Dio or Nolan's Joker. It's missing the point of their character. Perdóname por todo, Goku! Now that I've proven that Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf is very true to his character, let's talk about him. First, I've seen people complain that we never see his origin. Now, would I have liked to know more about him? Yes. Is it detrimental that we don't? No. His origin not being explained doesn't make anything worse. You can say, I wish we saw more of him, but you can't say not knowing more of him is detrimental to his character. Second, I've also seen complaints about how after the prologue he stays in the same place for the rest of the game. What I will say is that he stays there because he needs to gain his power back, and he absolutely interacts with the world as Puppet Zelda, and talks to you before and after Phantom Ganon, besides the fact that everything you see it's his fault. But you know what? If you dislike this, it's alright. I don't, but it is fine if you think that. However, if you tell me that you don't like it because of how few actual appearances he has, then you also have to dislike Wind Waker Ganondorf, because he appears 3 times in the game, one with no dialogue, and one short time where he talks. That's actually way less than Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf. So, you either like both, or don't like neither. If you like one, but not the other, maybe you should consider that you aren't judging this impartially. The most important criticism, however, is unfortunate. Basically, Ganondorf has zero motivation in this story other than being evil and hurting people. He doesn't have any more depth than Ocarina of Time Ganondorf. Or at least that's what everyone who played the English version saw. You see, when I talked about mistranslations, I was especially furious with this moment in particular. This speech just makes him look like a confident monster. This characterization will be good for a character like Demise, but for Ganondorf, who was born human, it comes off as very lazy and unimaginative. But that's because of a mistranslation. This is what he says in Japanese. Sad. A world that should be filled with darkness detestably overflows with light. A crowd of peace-craving cowards prevail. I still felt their fighting spirit from long ago. That translation, of course, is very literal, but you get the idea, and here is a little part of that text with a translation from Celtic. I don't know where he got it from, but I trust it. This world is overrun by throngs of peace-loving cowards. It once had vigor, a fighting spirit. However, if you don't trust this random translation, then allow me to read what he says in other languages. How pathetic. Darkness should ravage the world, but that unbearable light invades it all. The world is full of cowards that only desire peace. In past times, there was actually real suffering. How pathetic is that? The world that should be plunged into darkness is bathed in a detestable light. The beings who populate it are complacent in peace and tranquility, cowards that they are. At least in the past, they still showed tenacity. How disappointing. This world, which should be covered by darkness, bathes in an abysmal light. Cowardly weaklings chirp for tranquility. It wasn't like this before. Only the strongest used to rejoice. How disappointing. This world was already dedicated to darkness, but this shameful light has laid over it. Now it only reeks of cowards who's nothing worth more than their crappy peace. Back then it was different. Everywhere you could see fighting spirit. And my favorite, the Italian. How pathetic. A world destined to darkness is tortured by a stubborn light. Cowards try to hide their cowardice with a desire of peace. Real courage dissolved time ago. Ganondorf hates peace because he believes wholeheartedly in the saying, hard times make strong men make good times make weak men make hard times. This also explains his bitterness towards the Zonai and why he hates Rauru so much. They came with the power of the gods and used it to make the lives of everyone easier, eliminating their need for fighting spirit. This explains why Ganondorf hates Rauru and Hyrule so much. This explains why the Demon Tribe has him as their leader, since chaos is what they want. I also noted that perhaps Ganondorf is supposed to be an hypocrite again, like in Wind Waker. After all, he claims people are weak and lack fighting spirit, but all throughout the game we see people fighting for survival. They don't wait for Link to help them, they are doing stuff to survive and serve their communities. And Ganondorf is using the power of the gods to crush them, so this isn't very fair. Just like in Wind Waker, Ganondorf's giant ego prevents him from seeing the truth. He sees what he wants to see. This also differentiates this Ganondorf from his previous incarnations. It also keeps Ganondorf as a completely evil character but not just insane for the sake of it. And all of this nuance was eliminated from the version most people play. Of course, his motivation isn't completely lost, there are scratches of it spread around. But without this moment to emphasize it, it is difficult to see. It's like if Ganondorf in the Wind Waker didn't have that speech talking about why he wanted Hyrule. I've seen one or two guys trying to excuse it by saying things like that the line about the worthy foe is supposed to show how Ganondorf wants a stronger world, but that is a bit of a stretch. The line just seems to imply that he doesn't recognize Link's strength. It is a shame, but I hope they managed to show you why this Ganondorf isn't simply a worthless rehash of Ocarina of Time Ganondorf. He does have new stuff. What I'm about to say might be a bit controversial, but I believe that Tears of the Kingdom Ganondorf is at worst almost as good as Wind Waker, and at best even better. Ganondorf in Tears of the Kingdom has so much interaction with the characters, at a level that only Ocarina of Time Ganondorf had. He takes everything away from Zelda, he takes everything away from Rauru, he kills Sonia, he causes Mineru's premature death, he devastates the world as Calamity Ganon, he destroys the Master Sword causing Zelda to have to become a dragon for eternity, he destroys Link's arm, he takes Zelda away from him, he tries to drown the kingdom, he uses dirty tactics, he steals every scene where he's in, he is hateable and his motivations are understandable. No one that values tranquility would agree with him, but from his twisted and insane views it makes sense to him. One last thing I've seen is that people say that he is very unconnected to Link, unlike Ocarina of Time or Wind Waker. What? He destroys his arm and his sword. He takes Zelda away from him, and remember, Link loves Zelda, either platonically or romantically, and Link sees all the things Ganondorf did. I understand that Link isn't very expressive in this game, which is something I don't like, but Link is supposed to have similar feelings to the player, and if you hated Ganondorf as much as I did, then Link really wanted to drive that sword into his skull. And Ganondorf thought Link was going to give him a good fight and was disappointed, but still grew to respect Link over the adventure. You may notice that he fought the sages with nothing but his fists, but immediately drew his weapon with Link. That shows he respects him. To be honest, I see the same hatred and rivalry between these two as in Wind Waker or Ocarina of Time, not exactly sure why people think otherwise. The characters in Tears of the Kingdom are as good as always, their decisions all make sense, they all have distinct personalities, and then there's the sages. I have to interrupt for a second. The sages are terrible. Seriously, they did it so well with the champions in Breath of the Wild. They were really lazy with these guys. The worst part is that they don't even hide it. They're not subtle. They don't even show their faces. At least the current sages are great, but seriously, these guys could have shown us how the races were in the past, just like Rauru, Sonia and Mineru do. See? I don't want to brag about it, but I'm not just blindly defending the game. It does things wrong and many things right. And going forward, there are many flaws I'll acknowledge. I really hate how people interact with essays. You're either a hater who just wants to hate the game and will argue in bad faith, or a blind fanboy who excuses everything. The worst part is that people actually are like this, so I can't really blame them. Now let's talk about world building, first as a sequel to Breath of the Wild and then individually. There are certain things that don't quite add up. For example, despite Link not leaving Zelda's side, no one in Hateno village recognizes him even a little. Even if he doesn't live there, he should pass sometimes for Zelda. That and that there are no scraps anywhere of the Guardians and Divine Beasts. I've heard a theory that says that Ganondorf's miasma destroyed the scraps, but again, there is no indication in the game for that. However, that's all I can give you. The most common criticism is many NPCs forgetting Link from Breath of the Wild. Okay, the time skip between the games is ambiguous, but looking at some Gerudos and especially Matison, we can conclude that there were from 5 to 8 years of difference between the games. There's a characteristic of Link that many seem to forget or ignore. Link is a really shy guy, very introverted and not very talkative. There is a quest with Tracy where she recognizes Link and doesn't tell Pen so he doesn't get distracted. Link never tells him who he is even after the quest. Link isn't a guy that brags about his accomplishments. He probably doesn't even want to be acknowledged at all. In Breath of the Wild, he literally complains about how much everyone has their eyes on him. Do you really think he wouldn't try to go unnoticed? 5 to 8 years have passed. People just forgot talking to him in Breath of the Wild. It might sound surprising to you, but in so many years it is easy to forget. Hell, I have met friends and forgot about them in months. But do you want to hear an anecdote of mine? I used to have a close friend. We saw each other so much, but eventually we stopped enjoying company with the other and cut the relationship completely. Years later, in the gym, there's a guy that says hi and calls me my name. I say hi assuming I must have seen him somewhere, and I don't know how much later I came to the realization that it was him. I knew him for years, but after like 5 or 6 years it took me from 30 minutes to an hour to recognize him. Now imagine this, but with a guy you interacted once or twice. It's not that unrealistic. Bolson may have talked to you a lot, but after so many years of zero communication, do you really think it is surprising that he forgot / doesn't recognize you? Most people know of a guy named Link who saved the kingdom and is the guard of the princess, but they clearly haven't seen him and Link acts like he isn't. I understand that maybe if you save the kingdom you will brag about it all day, but that isn't Link. Even then, characters from main missions do tend to recognize you, especially the Sora. Except from that one guy, which is the only exception for some reason. Either he is too old or they literally forgot he knows you. But aside from that, there are characters that recognize Link, it's just usually the main ones. With Link's shy attitude and the time skip, the criticisms for characters not remembering Link is most times wrong. There isn't a reason for them to recognize you. I'm not saying this is the only way it should be, but there isn't anything wrong with this direction. It's mostly fine. I personally noticed it, guessed it was for Link's attitude and move on. To me it's pretty amusing that Link acts like that, but everybody always complains so much about this, unless it's a specific thing like that one guy. Again, you can say you would have preferred something else, but don't come at me telling me it's bad storytelling or something. It isn't even good, but there's nothing to be mad about. Then we have a lack of mentions about Breath of the Wild. But again, there was a time skip of 5 to 8 years. The events of Breath of the Wild must have already been talked about to death, and now there are more important things to worry about. Also, Breath of the Wild happened in a few months. Until Link awakened, the castle and the divine beasts were all calm. They weren't causing trouble for 100 years. The disappearance of the shrines and towers was also to be expected. All of these were unearthed close to Ganon's return. It's not crazy to think that they just returned to the ground after their work was done. Again, an explanation would have been nice, but this isn't too crazy anyway. It's not a leap in logic. And for the Shrine of Resurrection, that became property of the Giga, so they probably just dismantled it. For Ganon, many wonder what his relation is to Ganondorf and why the game almost doesn't explain it, save for a few mentions. The problem is, that was already explained in Breath of the Wild.
厄災ガノンの正体、それは太古の昔この国に生まれた魔王が怨念と化して復活した姿なのだ。ガノンは伝説や研ぎ話に現れるものとして語り継がれてきた。
So yeah, it's just Ganondorf's hatred taking a physical form. Ganondorf probably doesn't even know about this. Although the characters never mentioning that Ganondorf's name is just 4 letters away from Ganon is weird. I'll give you that. Maybe they just assume Ganon must be a name for demons or something, but it's weird that Zelda suspects of Ganondorf and no one except for Impa connects Ganon to Ganondorf. Tears of the Kingdom made these quirks the series had much more apparent. Twilight Princess never explains what happened to Ocarina of Time's dungeons, what happened to the Gerudo, what happened to the Kokiri and the Deku Tree, why do the characters have the Triforce, why was the original Kakariko left hidden and a new Kakariko constructed, or why is the Temple of Time in the forest. In Four Swords Adventures, despite the game implying it is a direct sequel to Four Swords, It is so ambiguous that Nintendo could change this and many just accepted it. In the Oracle games, despite using the same Link, Zelda still presents herself again. In Majora's Mask, despite Link having the Triforce of Courage, the game never hints that he has it, and Link doesn't know Epona's song. And Wind Waker, which I think is the most consistent one, doesn't explain why the Deku Tree doesn't draw attention to the fact that the hero Winds has the same name as the hero of Time. I mean, this line could mean he noticed, but it is ambiguous. At least Ganondorf calls him the hero of Time Reborn, so he didn't acknowledge him. And Wind Waker still has its mysteries. But much time and change happening, so it gets a pass for a lot of things. What I'm trying to show here is not flaws, mostly. Is that these games always had this kind of writing. Most of these aren't plot holes, they are mysteries that the games don't acknowledge. Maybe they personally know you. But as long as they aren't plot holes or require huge leaps in logic to explain, they aren't objective flaws. Tears of the Kingdom also has continuations to Breath of the Wild that I see people ignore. Characters like Riju and Yunobo continue their development of Breath of the Wild. Sidon has scars from Mipha's death, he needs to heal, and Tulin is starting to become very arrogant like Revali. These aren't super obvious, but in a way they made me feel good for catching them after playing Breath of the Wild. But of course that's subjective. However, Tears of the Kingdom does continue many things from Breath of the Wild, even if not all. I find this fixation on its flaws and weirdness to be exaggerated. I don't usually see people complaining about this stuff in the other games. At least criticize all of them, not just the newest one. Tears of the Kingdom isn't a bad sequel, it's also not a tremendous one, it's just passable. Move on. Well, let's talk about the lore of Tears of the Kingdom. The Sonai. I'm gonna get straight to the point. If you were disappointed with the Sonai, I don't know what to tell you. This is how Nintendo always makes the ancient tribes in Zelda. Ancient tribes like this, like the Twilight or the ancient Sheikah, are normally pretty mysterious and ambiguous. They're not the kind of tribes you get a detailed explanation on. The Sonai were never supposed to change Zelda forever like some say, and will probably lose importance in the next games, like every tribe they made in the past. Why would you believe they were going to be the big thing? The trailers and all the stuff weren't promising anything revolutionary, I checked. About their importance, well, we know they were a race in the sky close to the gods with magic more powerful than anyone else. They eventually decided to descend and use their power to make the world a better place with their secret stones. Something mysterious happened to them that caused them to decline. Nothing new in Zelda. The lore of the Sonai was entertaining, and in the following months more and more information will be discovered. Perhaps by the time I release this video there's tons of new information. Overall, I see people complaining that the game doesn't give tons of information about the past. Sorry if I sound condescending, I really don't want to, but isn't theorizing about a huge amount of mysteries what you always do in every Zelda game? Sometimes it seems to me that people thought that Tears of the Kingdom was going to give answers for everything and connect the franchise together. I've seen people disappointed with the 8 heroines questline, but I don't know why a side quest in Breath of the Wild would be important. As cool as theories are, I think sometimes they can get so imaginative that they make plot points the original writers couldn't even have imagined. This isn't only for this game, it happens to every story I see. Theorists always get crazy. I always take these theories for what they are, fun. I normally have my expectations for any story controlled and open-minded. And I think more people should do that. The Secret Stones. Yeah, the name sucks. Mainly because they translated it literally. I'm no expert, but I've heard that the intention in Japanese isn't that they are secret, but that they reveal the secret power of the one who deals it. This isn't just the English one, Spanish and others also use that name. It's weird that they didn't see the problem. Regardless, the Secret Stones are pretty cool. They reveal the and power up the special ability of the bearer. Ganondorf, for example, isn't physically stronger with the Secret Stone. His miasma powers are what becomes insanely more powerful. They are also a good way to make the side characters more important in combat, where the original Triforce was a bit limited since only the trio had it. To be honest, the Secret Stones are just a good thing in the game. I haven't mentioned criticism because the complaints aside from the name are really lame. It just gives me the impression that people wanted the Triforce. Thing that has been used in so many games. To be honest, I like that these new games are ignoring the Triforce. Give it a rest, otherwise it will become stale. Not much more to mention about lore. Most things and differences with Breath of the Wild, like Sky Islands, holes to the abyss, and geoglyphs, are normally explained with the upheaval Ganondorf caused. Let's talk a bit more about the main quest. Getting the last memory first must be absolutely disappointing, and I wouldn't wish it for anyone. Some people miss the Forgotten Temple. I don't even know why you can get the memories before going there. You couldn't do that in Breath of the Wild unless you could and I'm wrong, but since I already shared a lot of problems with the geoglyphs in this game, let's actually defend them a bit because they're not all bad. The criticisms for this and the memories in Breath of the Wild is that they are disconnected from the main story and it doesn't feel impactful because it all happened in the past. I strongly disagree, and I disagree in Breath of the Wild too. The story of the past in these games isn't all the story you get, it's half. The other half is the main quest, is the thing Link does through the game. The problem in Breath of the Wild wasn't the memories, it was that the main quest, with the exception of the Sora and Gerudo, was lacking. In Tears of the Kingdom, the game has a lot more story in the present, and the side quests are also much more connected to the main adventure while remaining secondary. My second defense is that the memories go very well with the main objective of the game, exploring. There are many areas in the game I perhaps wouldn't have explored without the story incentive, and you'll come up with things while you do it. My third defense is that I don't even find these to be uninteresting or unimpactful. I think they're always entertaining and good to see Zelda in the game. This was also true for Breath of the Wild, but in Tears of the Kingdom it is even more important. The sacrifice Zelda makes in the end wouldn't be as impactful without the other ones. I understand if you don't like them, but please, be a bit more respectful to the people that do, and don't act like your opinion and taste are the center of the world, which a lot of people should start doing. Also, about Mineru mentioning the dragon thing, I think it isn't strictly a bad thing to see the twist coming. It depends on your perspective. Knowing a twist doesn't necessarily ruin it. The twist of Darth Vader in Star Wars is still entertaining even if you see it coming. I don't think Zelda's sacrifice is worse if you know it. You can still be at suspense to see if she'll do it or not, and seeing the scene is impactful anyway. Also, if you search for the Light Dragon for parts or the Master Sword in the internet before the twist, that's your fault. The developers can't account for you looking there.
As soon as Mineru said something about eating a secret stone being an easy way of turning into an immortal dragon and losing your mind, I was confident that this little bit of foreshadowing was there for Ganondorf. Inevitably, you'd end up fighting him and he'd start losing, so he'd resort to a pretty dramatic tactic of becoming a big dragon. As if Zelda villains haven't done that before in the past. So you can imagine my genuine shock that all of this foreshadowing was instead for Zelda to go down this route and, out of desperation, turn into a huge dragon so that she can just hold on to the Master Sword for thousands of years to help recharge its batteries.
I guess you could make that argument for Puppet Zelda too. Perhaps Link doesn't want to tell his friends that Zelda Draconified herself, and is trying to see who is the impostor. Although if that is the case, the game could, hint at it. All you have to is that Link doesn't look very happy when he finds Puppet Zelda, but even if it is predictable, I still find it enjoyable. Also, a little anecdote. When I found the third memory, I actually didn't get that she was talking about those dragons. I thought the dragon was a symbolism for immortal, and she talks about losing your essence. So I actually thought that Zelda in the present was actually real and she had lost her essence. I still did the memories before Hyrule Castle, so it didn't fool me, but it almost does. It helps that I didn't realize there was a new dragon, but well, that's a personal experience. I think that's the biggest difficulty about discussing the game. In some instances, personal experience can influence a lot in your, experience. For example, Fat Brett talked very positively about Koga and how he appears all throughout the game and evolving. The thing is, I had a completely different experience. I didn't find Koga until the very end of the game, so he wasn't a villain that appeared all throughout the game. He was more like a comedy episode right before the finale of a series. I loved it, but for a completely different reason. The storytelling in these games can lead to some awesome things. It is a shame that the coin has two faces, but I'm tired of everyone always talking about the negatives and never mentioning the positives in this. Probably because a lot of these people want old Zelda back. Although I think it would be cool if the Zelda team divided itself in two to work on both kind of games. This is dumb. So, enough defenses. What is there to love about the story of Tears of the Kingdom? Well, of course the beginning is the best in the series, so much the story inevitably suffers a downgrade after it. But with a beginning this good, it's honestly unavoidable. The 4 quests you are given all let you see how the world has evolved from Breath of the Wild. You see old and new faces. This time, however, the stakes are a lot higher. This game really felt like a really big Ocarina of Time in that regard. First you help the people with their problems from a great evil, but then the years pass and now you have to once again help the same people from the same evil but far more powerful. You can see how much higher the stakes are. But unlike Breath of the Wild, you spend a lot more time with the characters. The places you go to are much more intriguing since instead of apparently familiar things, they are ancient places that no civilized people have laid a finger on in a millennia. While intrigued to see if Zelda is real or fake. When you go into the castle it feels unwelcoming and it is pretty obvious that Zelda is setting a trap. And then everyone you helped so far actually comes together for once. I just realized as I'm writing this that this is the first time in the 3D series where your team gets together. Then in the past we see what happened to Zelda. Perhaps these cutscenes are limited and have to be concise, but regardless they achieve their objective. You see how Zelda bonds with her ancestors in the past, having the family she never had, and you can see some extras about it in that side quest. The cutscenes also are much more epic than last time. Maybe not the pinnacle of choreography, but still exciting. There are so many great moments, like Ganondorf taking advantage of Rauru's desire of peace to subtly insult him, Sonia's death and Ganondorf's transformation, along with his uncanny enjoyment of the situation, Ganondorf throwing salt at the wound, the scene with Zelda telling Rauru he won't win but Rauru reassuring that he has to fight to amend his mistake, the best scene in the game where Rauru steals Ganondorf, the absolutely fantastic scenes of Zelda deciding to sacrifice herself. Zelda's entire journey was so good I actually don't miss we didn't get her in the main adventure. Seeing the dragon in the sky after doing the memories is always a weird feeling, and thinking that in the end it will be her energy that defeats the Demon King was special in its own way. The finale of the game is straight up the best in the series. You descend so much into the abyss, feeling like you truly are entering the closest thing there is to hell in this world. And then you get to the fight with all the friends you recruited, and well, if only there was a video that talked about how good the Ganondorf fight is. Right when the fight is over, suddenly we get a scene that I already complained about, and I stand with everything I said. But it is really hard to focus on that because of how well made everything but the explanation is. Since Breath of the Wild we have learned to like Zelda, we have so much history with her at this point, and you lose her. Normally Zelda is a stranger to us, but this time if you play Breath of the Wild you knew her, which made it more impactful than usual. After getting the Master Sword and going into the imprisoning chamber, you get completely destroyed. His arm is destroyed and fail to catch her, and she disappears. Throughout the game you try to find out where she is, only to find she is long gone. But hope isn't lost. After all, the objective to find Zelda isn't marked. Link refuses to think this is the ending for her. Finally, you, maybe, get the Master Sword, going to the imprisoning chamber, but thanks to the help you have now, and especially thanks to Zelda, you succeed. You recover your arm, you recover Zelda, and there's only one thing left. And the game gives you complete control. You have to do it yourself. The music is otherworldly, especially when Zelda's lullaby starts playing. And finally, you catch her. And then the scene where she wakes up is so heartwarming. It isn't heartwarming, it's straight up a flamethrower to the heart. And when the first mission you got is marked, it's so satisfying. It's just so difficult to focus on the lack of foreshadowing when it is this good. Fuck it, I adore this ending. It's the best finale in The Legend of Zelda, and the 4 games of those 10 years have great endings, but this one is so powerful. Perhaps Zelda staying as a dragon would have been good, but I assure you it wouldn't have been as good as this. Seriously, just add more foreshadowing to this and make Zelda forget some stuff of her past, and you have an almost perfect ending. This is all only about the main stuff. There are so many good things in the side quests. The Giga Clan is a complete improvement, there are so many nice follow-ups to Breath of the Wild, and some side quests were really good, everything improving the main story. I don't want to ignore the flaws the game has, it has really terrible stuff, but the good overall outweighs the bad. It's a really good story. It's not great, it's not the pinnacle of video game storytelling, but can we stop being so hyperbolic? A story doesn't need to be an absolute masterpiece to be good, and none of the previous Zelda stories were masterpieces anyway. Seriously, I love the stories of these games. I even think that if I could play Skyward Sword I would like it too. But I always roll my eyes when someone says Majora's Mask or Twilight Princess are dark games. Are they bizarre and mature at times? Yes. Are they dark? No, not in the slightest. If you really think they're dark, then you haven't seen an actually dark story. Some people just don't get these are children's stories. Majora's Mask beginning is pretty grim, but after the tutorial Link gets his body back immediately, and throughout the game we solve the problems people have. In the ending it shows everyone happy. Skull Kid learns about that his former friends still remember him, and replaces them with Link, and Link replaces Navi with Skull Kid. The mask salesman also implies he will come back to Hyrule, and also states the mask Link has are filled with happiness. The spirits that died rest well. There are certain sad touches like the Deku butler discovering his son's corpse, but at least now that he knows he can move on. In Twilight Princess the only tragedy that remains in the ending is the death of the Sora Queen, but it seems her son will do fine. Aside from that, not much tragedy remained. Ilia even recovered her memories. In the end, Midna recovers her power and former form, and comes back to rule her people. Sure, she will never see Link and Zelda again, not alive at least, because the afterlife always exists for them to see each other again. Both endings aren't dark at all. In fact, I will say Wind Waker and Ocarina of Time are easily more bittersweet. And the only thing bittersweet about Wind Waker is that the guy that should be dead for hundreds of years dies because he wanted. What a shame. And that the characters abandon their home in search of a new land, but we already know that ends well. And because the Master Sword is no longer of use, the sages can literally go back home, so that's a sacrifice undone. And I've seen Skyward Sword ending. For the looks of it doesn't look very tragic. So the only really bittersweet ending is Ocarina of Time, where Zelda can't see Link ever again and there are many scars left from Ganondorf's rule. But you could also say that Link creates an ideal timeline where Ganondorf's plans are over early, so there's one bittersweet ending and a happy ending at the same time. Tears of the Kingdom isn't very different. All of the people who suffered because of Ganondorf still suffered, but at least they can rest well now knowing that he's gone. And Zelda's fate staying as a dragon would have been very horrible for the tone this series has. And her sacrifice wasn't 100% undone. She still had to take the horrifying decision of erasing her life, and although she claims she doesn't remember anything, there's more than one way to interpret that. In Ant-Man, Scott goes subatomic and later doesn't remember anything, and Hank explains that it is possible that the human mind can't comprehend the experience. It's very likely that she simply can't understand the nothingness of being a dragon. After all, she does say she was dreaming. What I'm trying to say is that these are children's stories. Or more accurately, stories for all ages. Trying to make 1,000 excuses on how adult the stories are is ironically childish. Not all stories need to be complex, with great themes and complicated characters. Sometimes it's nice to have a simpler tale with a bad guy that isn't being misunderstood or something, but instead is just a bad person. Otherwise it becomes repetitive, that's why genres exist. If I want to play a depressing and complicated story, I play From Software. If I want a simpler, enjoyable story, then I play Zelda. Also, I'm not saying that these should be completely happy stories. The Zelda series knows how to balance these things, but the dark things are made to balance the many nice things, while in something like Berserk the nice things are made to balance the very dark ones. A lot of times I feel the Zelda fanbase doesn't understand the tones of their own stories. Okay, I'll say it, I hate the Zelda fanbase. That doesn't mean I hate every single person, but in general I just don't like interacting with them. And it isn't because they dislike a story I like. I hate how the newer fans dismiss old Zelda, I hate how old Zelda fans dismiss new Zelda and invent 10,000 excuses on why it isn't Zelda. I hate how N64 fans overhype their own games. I hate how Wind Waker fans talk all day about why the toon style is better. I hate how Twilight Princess fans try to want this fairy tale series to be more realistic. I hate how A Link to the Past fans try to talk about how Ocarina of Time is dated and A Link to the Past isn't, when A Link to the Past aged far worse than Ocarina of Time. I hate how Skyward Sword fans... No, you know what, those guys are chill. And I hate the reading comprehension most have, especially with Majora's Mask. Seriously, every time I hear someone say the hero's shade is a Stalfos, my eyes roll like crazy. In all honesty, I don't know why I'm surprised about the receptions on this game. I guess the best thing you can do is ignore them. And stay out of Reddit. Well, that's the videos. If you like them, consider subscribing, check out some of my other stuff, and see you later.